Peace and love, everybody. Bro Sanchez speaking. Welcome back to part 3 of a series of videos where we are discussing ancient afterlife beliefs. And we're going to continue on in this video. We have a lot to cover in part 3, so let's get right into it. Modern Judaic, Christian, and Islamic religions featured one God. Since the Christian and Islamic religions were derived from Judaism, this one God is the same God for all three faiths. The worship of one and only one God is called monotheism. And according to Robert Wright, there was nothing like the sort of monotheistic thinking that permeates Western religions until the 3rd century BCE. Prior to then, polytheism reigned with multiple deities running the show. Their names and specific responsibilities depended on one's culture. There were wind gods, rain gods, ocean deities that controlled the tides, gods of happiness and gods of doom, death, and destruction. There were gods and goddesses of love, gods of war, deities of good times and bad. There were also household goddesses, fertility gods, gods of health, and separate gods that reigned over almost every conceivable chunk of nature. There were big gods like sun gods and also smaller deities. Gilgamesh was informed that the gods, not God, had ordained that human life is only temporary. When Ba and Ka were reunited with the body in Egyptian mythology, the restored person joined the gods in the underground of eternal life. All of these gods, goddesses, spirits, angels, and deities, including members of the ancestral world, were integral parts of nature. Some were whimsical, moody, and difficult to control. Others were open to negotiations, particularly when gifts and sacrificial offerings were part of the deal. But all of that changed upon the arrival of a single Israelite God named Yahweh. Kaufman, an authority on the history of Judaism religion, writes, Yahweh does not live in the process of nature. He controls them. So basically, just to sum this little passage up, we understand that in the ancient world, polytheism was the natural way. Basically, you were thought to think of polytheism as something negative when really, when you look at monotheism, you can't escape the polytheistic remnants. You can't escape the idea and the whole ancient concept behind polytheism, which is the creator can be seen through every attribute of the creation. So when we talk about polytheism, we're talking about ancient ancestors who included science into their religious beliefs, unlike us today. So they lived in unison with nature and the planet, and as a result, they had polytheistic beliefs that would give attributes to nature, different personalities to express that individual aspect of the creator. And it's a beautiful concept. So when you think about monotheism, on the other hand, it's one deity that rules sort of like a dictatorship. And if you don't follow what I'm telling you to do, something's going to happen to you. So you need to be obedient. You better not pout. You better not shout. He sees you when you're sleeping. He knows when you're awake. We're talking about the introduction of the big brother religions, where you are ruled through fear and deception. I have so much more to read, but basically to sum up what we just read, we're going from polytheism, ancient world, to monotheistic modern world. And when you look at polytheism and monotheism, they're really one and the same. You have to understand balance. There's no either or, because when you look at monotheistic deities like Jesus, you still can see them acted out in different aspects, in different forms, and even given different names, just like polytheistic ancient cultures. So you may have Jesus, and you may have a Jehovah form of Jesus, and you may have a Father, Son of Jesus, and a Holy Ghost form, and a different forms that this deity can assume to express different aspects of that deity or whatever that culture was trying to embody in different aspects and different characteristics of that deity, because all of these deities is just an overall ideology that shapes a value system, and really the ideals of a society. It really shapes the boundaries of our reality and governs the corners of our minds. Just to give you a quick summary here. So as we read on, you will gain more understanding. So let's continue. So what we will find as we do further research is that a lot of religious ideals and beliefs were simply created to enforce hidden agendas of those who created the religions, because the true gods of those religions are the ones who are interpreting the voice of that deity. So all of these religious ideals were created to serve agendas, and the reason they were accepted by the people is because when the people were deceived into accepting the deities, then they accepted the ideals that came along with those deities. You're going to see what I mean here as we read on. So Wright emphasizes the on-the-ground political and economic realities involved in the gradual emergence of a single God. He tells a multi-layered story of the role of early commerce in the movement from polytheism to monotheism. One of his premises is that it was good to have as many trading partners as possible for the economic health and well-being of nations involved. But that principle remained true only as long as trading nations mutually benefited by the arrangement. When all sides benefit, it is easy to overlook differences in belief systems. And we can see this acted out today, where the U.S. is supposed to be a Christian country. Even when we're at war with other countries like Muslim countries, we still see the deals being made and negotiations being made. So, for example, you can have troops go fight on the ground and kill one another, and then you would have the nation's elite of both of those countries come together with coffee and cigars over a table and shake hands, smiling, and cancel the whole war in 1 second. But they use these humans as resources when they could have done this in the first place. So who's to say there was any conflict to begin with? The whole agenda is population control, not to mention milking humanity of all its resources, because one way to do that is the creation of war. It shows you how all of this is related, so the religion ties into this. When I was in the military, there's a lot of troops that'll tell you how before they hopped off that plane, all of those troops would be in a circle praying together. And they're going over here to a land to kill young men who are doing the same, praying to their different deities who they were taught by their governments to have faith in. So at the root of it is the values. At the core of the human, we are being controlled by our emotions and being steered by the beliefs that has been injected into us since we were children. So the deception goes real deep, but as we move on, we see that when all sides benefit, it's easy to overlook differences in belief systems, and we see that at the higher up. However, the people at the bottom never quite get it, that it's all convenient for those in power. We're just a commodity, we're just a resource, and we're being used. These belief systems is the controller that controls you. So when we're talking about overlooking differences in belief systems to maintain trading agreements and all of this, this has always been an issue, not only in the ancient world, but as you can see today, that for a while certain countries get along and they keep certain trade systems going, and then there's a disagreement or something and the people are used as resources, and it's all because someone isn't benefiting. Because when all sides benefit, those differences are overlooked. So what happens when things don't go smoothly? What happens when one nation invades and manages to occupy another nation? The leaders of a conquering nation have a choice. One option is to permit the conquered people to continue to worship their gods and thereby acknowledge that gods other than one's own exist. And that is a condition called monolatry that you can research. But another option is to ban the worship of all gods other than one's own. So this is what happened when a nation is invaded. So Wright also shows how these options are played out in the Old Testament. Although religious tolerance is evident in some portions of the Old Testament, an angry God, a God who insists on being the only God, a God intent on blood and vengeance carries the day. And we know that it's the bulk of the Bible, especially when we deal with the Old Testament. So Yahweh's rise to ultimate power in the minds of Jewish theologians did not come about because ancient Jews had always been successful in protecting their lands or taking over the territory of their enemies. Instead, Wright proposes that his elevation was the result of major defeats. The Babylonians had conquered Israelite lands and had belittled their God by destroying his temple in Jerusalem. Prior to that, the Assyrians had stripped the temple of its treasures. In other words, Yahweh rose through the ranks after he had taken it on the chin. Jewish theologians and intellectuals spent many years in self-imposed or enemy-imposed exile and had plenty of time to ponder why Yahweh appeared to be such a weakling. Their solution changed the world. Instead of Yahweh being one among many gods, he was in charge of the entire show. Marduk, the god of the Babylonians, and all the other gods of other nations were Yahweh's puppets. A new understanding of history emerged from the deliberations of these exiles when they concluded that Yahweh and Yahweh alone had orchestrated the setbacks, the defeats, and the changing fortunes of ancient Israelite tribes. Yahweh arranged for their temple to be plundered and their people slaughtered because they angered him by continuing to worship other gods. And if you take a look at some of these Hebrew Israelite communities, this is exactly what they teach, ladies and gentlemen. Help me spread this message, because you can see here at the root of all this deception that's controlling this divide and conquering that we're seeing among the people. The Hegelian dialectic is very real, ladies and gentlemen. You can see here that this is basically the foundation of Hebrew Israelite beliefs. They are being deceived, and this monotheistic philosophy where this dude is ruling all of these other dudes in a brotherhood creates a very radical message that's not balanced. These people preach this message on the streets while still partaking in the destruction of nature and their own people and themselves, because knowledge is power, and where the people lack knowledge, they are powerless, and lack of knowledge is why people suffer. So we see these Hebrew Israelites on the streets antagonizing the people with their monotheistic doctrines and their foolish ideologies. And you will notice at the root of their philosophies is this boss type God, this mob boss who gonna get you because you didn't obey what they told you to obey. And you'll hear them say this on the streets when they preaching their message. They'll tell them, Yahweh gonna get you, man. Yahweh gonna burn you up. You with that cracker. You know, they saying that their God is gonna get you. So like I said, when you spell God backwards, it becomes dog. And that's exactly how people treat their concept of their gods. They treat it like dogs because they sick them on everybody who go against their ideology and what they hold to be true. When they have the most bizarre concepts on earth, it really bothers me. So Yahweh arranged their surprising victories to show them and all other nations who is boss. This is the attitude of the Hebrew Israelite. Not only them, but all of these Christians, because coming up, you would hear your grandmother or your mother say, that's all right, Jesus gonna take care of them. So basically, nature take care of every wrong that's committed. We don't have to assist nature in being the judge. Nature got it under control. Karma is very real. Sometimes it comes instantly. What happens is you bring about karma upon yourself. The idea we have based on all of these gods, it creates a type human where those people never console the differences. They both go to these imaginary gods and console it with these invisible friends, but have grudges deep on the inside with each other. You'll see people in the church not speaking. You know, months go by every Sunday, you know, sister and such and sister such and such ain't speaking. What they praying for each other in a closet, but they're not talking to the individual. We are the manifestation of the deities we give all of our power to. And as a result of us surrendering all of our life energy to these corrupted deities that serves the agenda of the elite, we create a world of turmoil where not only we suffer, but the children as well. So we got to work just as hard as those that's spreading the deception. So the God of the Bible makes all other gods irrelevant, figments of imaginations that perhaps echo the imaginations of hunter and gathering tribes. This God, this one and only true God, is a demanding God who operates with a long-range plan. But before we get to that and how that plan varies in the hands of the three major monotheistic religions, we need to face the fact that Plato's one soul, multiple bodies is a poor foundation for the sort of monotheistic thinking that began to carry the day. The shifting of national and religious loyalties were regular occurrences during and prior to Plato's declaration that the soul is immortal and moves from one body to the next until it reaches the final state of truth and beauty. That philosophic position, particularly the part about souls bouncing from one body to another, was a poor fit for the emergent one God only perspective. A better fit was found in Aristotle around 384 to 332 BCE. And you have to keep in mind this is during the time where they were actually counting time backwards. So when you're reading your history, you have to keep that in mind, ladies and gentlemen. I just want to point that out to you. BCE is before the Common Era. When we say from around 384 up until 332, you can see that we're going up in time, but the years are going downward because at this time they were rewriting history and forging a lot of these lies into our history book that we hold so dearly to today, that create these radical bogus groups like Hebrew Israelites who go around looking like they hopped off of a Star Wars movie. And you got other different groups like the Moors and different people like this that's walking around with KFC chicken buckets on top of their head, which is really the ancient bee goddess headdress, and they don't even understand the history of that fez. So I'm trying to free everybody's mind and get us out of the dumb talk and spookism and back to nature and the ancient truth, but I need your help to do so. So again, you see that they was counting history backwards at this time because those deceivers was forging lies into our history books that still govern the world today. That's why I told you back in previous videos that Aristotle and Plato are figments of some guy's imagination. Whoever was the government order during this time created these personalities, Plato and Aristotle, to feed the lie under these bogus personalities. Nostradamus is another one, if you ask me. Where are these people's lineage? Where are these people's lineage, people? If you want to argue, Brother Sanchez, about this. Now, we're going to move on and get some more of this knowledge, and we're going to keep it calm and professional, baby. But the deception just angers me. So we can see that their Platonian ideologies of the soul and body started to be a problem for this new monotheistic religion that they were creating and trying to perfect at this time. So it was a poor fit when you tried to fit it into the one God only perspective. So they abandoned the Platonian model, and through this bogus Aristotle character, Plato's student, Aristotle is a student of Plato. So you can see when these deceivers, because they tell history through the voice of a god or through the voice of some divine prophet. So what you would get is that when they get caught up in the lie, or they want to change something in the matrix because they creating a new model and one of the lies don't go along with the new lie, you would see they would write into history where the knowledge was passed on to another questionable character, in this case Aristotle, who was the student of Plato. So Aristotle began to rise. So you can see how these guys control history through the voices of these bogus prophets and philosophers that they create. It's very intricate. Instead of following Plato's lead and emphasizing the soul's hostile relationship with the body, Aristotle stressed the idea that the soul is what makes a body a body. So we understand that you can't hold truth from the people for too long. And when the people start waking up to the truth, the deceivers that's still holding on to the lie will be quickly exposed. So they have to recreate and rewrite their foolish doctrines and their foolish ideologies every so couple of years to keep up with the consciousness of the people, because they know that the lie is only temporary, but the truth is the only thing that's eternal. So every time humanity is waking up, they come with different psyops and other different things throughout history to intercept that awakening. And you can see back in ancient days, a lot of that deception came into rewriting the history books and forcing different laws and beliefs onto the people, because this was during the time where beliefs, cosmology, state law, and government law was all one and the same. And during these times, the people was persecuted because of that fact that it was all the same. It was corrupted, where if you didn't believe what I want you to believe, I'm gonna put you to death. So we still see this form of crucifixion today, but it's in a mild form, verbal scrutiny and different things of that nature. Back in ancient day, it was forced upon a lot of people through fear, through conquest. And today, instead of those deceivers telling the truth that this stuff was forced upon people by your ancient ancestors and deceivers, we get a lot of bogus characters pop up into our history like Aristotle and Plato. And what we find is that history is fed through us through these bogus characters, but we really can't prove they existed. Where is Plato's lineage? Where is Aristotle's lineage? Everyone leaves a lineage behind on the earth in some form or way, or they come from a lineage, but not when it comes to the deception that's fed through us through Western religion and philosophies and ideologies. So I'm just trying to free your mind so we can see here, instead of following Plato's lead and emphasizing the soul's hostile relationship with the body, Aristotle stressed the idea that the soul is what makes a body a body. See, the controllers at this time is just like the controllers of today, y'all. They don't care what you believe, long as what you believe serves their agenda. So if you want to believe that being healthy and preserving the earth is a good thing to do, they have people that will give you that message, but at the end of it, it will serve another agenda. So for example, you would see on a lot of products that's bad for you, green leaves, organic, and you would see, for example, now milk is very cancerous. The only milk you're supposed to drink is the milk from your mother's breast, but we're the only species that drinks another species' milk. And what I'm trying to say here is, you'll notice they will give you a cartoon cow on a commercial to promote the milk, because the real cow is suffering in a slaughterhouse, but they will sell it to you with a cow that's a cartoon and a smile, as if the cow would like for you to drink its milk and have it locked inside of a slaughterhouse. Just showing you that as an example to show you how messages are fed to you like they are good, like they're for nature, like they're for you. And like it's so good when really it's very evil. And it's up to you to be able to have that intuition to see that. And we're not all given that early in life. I myself wasn't. I became awakened about 5 years ago, probably a little more than that, when I really just started realizing that Christianity wasn't what I thought it was. But it was so much more I had to learn besides that. So I've been on a journey ever since, and I tell you, it's a lot of stuff to know, and it seems to be endless. But let's continue on. So Aristotle referred to the soul as the formative principle of every living thing. Souls cannot exist without bodies, and bodies cannot become bodies in the absence of souls. The soul of a rose makes it a rose. The soul of a lion makes that creature a lion. Consider a chicken egg. It contains the potential of a development and creates a chicken. Virtually everything is ensouled in Aristotle's way of thinking. All souls, both human and non-human, enable the organism to respond to the features of their environments that might impinge on their survival. That's what souls do, and they do it automatically. No thought is involved. What makes human souls unique, what separates us from all other creatures, is the soul of a human contains a rational element that enables us to reason and think abstractly. The integration of the soul with the body to create a whole person is a stronger foundation for a belief system that implies or explicitly states that the fate of one is intertwined with the fate of the other. Look at it this way. If the body is perceived as a temporary container for a wandering soul, the body is no longer relevant to any afterlife concerns after the soul has bid its farewell. But if there is any hint that afterlife involves a body-soul reunion, or that the fate of the soul is contingent upon the role it played in the life of the body, one best pay careful attention to the relationship between the body and the soul in real life, because what is done in this life determines the quality of life in the next one and the next. It may appear that Aristotle's ideas about soul and body unity and the immortality of nous or nos provided a more solid philosophical foundation for monotheism than did Plato's ideas about body-to-body migration of souls. Now we're going to get into Judaism. Now, writing about early and contemporary Judaic beliefs about death and afterlife is a challenge because there is no universally agreed upon Jewish position on the topic. One simply cannot state this is what Jews believe about the afterlife and expect the statement to go unchallenged. Unlike afterlife beliefs of Muslims and Christian, commonly shared beliefs about afterlife are not imprinted on Jewish minds. Nonetheless, as we will see, they planted some seeds that became dogma for both Christian and Islamic religions. So as we move on, you must understand that the three major religions that control this land are Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Three-headed dragon. And there's a connection here to the Jews, to the elite Jews, the higher ups in positions on the power pyramid. And that connection exists for a reason. The Jews that run our world and create this order out of chaos seed the divisive ideologies that governs us out of that chaos in the form of these different religions we embrace. Depending on where you are depends on what religion you will become a part of. The choice is already made before you are born. So you have no choice in the matter. You just become it as tradition. And tradition is the biggest enemy of truth. So the world has been deceived with these lies, and we go to war because of these religions. But the leaders of these religions shake hands and smile together while feeding us the ideologies that create that chaos, that they may maintain this order. We see that Jewish people don't really have afterlife beliefs of heaven and hell. And it's kind of strange when you think that the beliefs that rule the world are rooted in fear, and they don't instill this fear on their own. One reason for the vagueness of Jewish positions on immortality and its partner life after death, these matters are not dealt with in the Hebrew Bible. The topic does not come up in the first 5 chapters of the Old Testament, where we are informed that in the beginning God created the earth, molded man from clay, and animated him with the breath of life. At death, the person becomes a dead breath, the body returns to dust, and the spirit returns to God. In addition to becoming dust, the dead, more likely the shadows of the dead, descend to Sheol, a place where the dead are dead. Sheol, like Homer's Hades, is a dark, dreary, shadowy pit where most people are gathered to their people. The exceptions to that rule are wicked people whose dust is prevented from resting in the vicinity of their kin. So we see this is what Jews teach their people, to create this kind of personal Jewish secret society among their communities. We understand that Jews are very personal. They only deal with themselves, and they have a very separatist mind state. And this is one of the reasons they control humanity, by creating a divided mind state in us, while they separate among themselves and control the world from the outside in. Now, we see that they teach this to reinforce that principle. And I'm pretty sure they got a bunch of laws in their tradition to make sure that their culture keeps thriving over others. So what they tell their followers is that if you break these Jewish laws, your dust is prevented from resting in the vicinity of your kin. They're clear to create the kin there. And you see that their place of rest is a place where everyone's gathered to their people. It's all to serve an agenda. It's not the belief, because the people will believe anything that they hear since birth. They'll take it as truth and reality. But it's the agenda behind a belief, the reality that the belief will create, and the agenda that it will serve. So other than that, nothing happens upon the Jewish death. All that's left is the intermingling of the residues of former human beings. But the belief that dead people are dead and that's the end of the story did not endure the test of time as other positions about life beyond the confines of Sheol were articulated. Before reviewing these alternative perspectives, one theme had been consistent throughout the ages of Jewish thought. What matters most is this life, the life currently being lived. A more accurate way to state that is, in general, what matters most is this life, the life currently being lived, because there are plenty of Jews who care deeply about afterlife. But as a rule, most Jews faithful to their traditions, Jews who celebrate their holidays in ways specified by their laws, Jews who structure their lives around their religious commandments, Jews who serve their people, Jews who fulfill their duties to God, do so not to assure themselves of a comfortable afterlife, but to preserve a tradition that they consider to be more important than their personal fate in an afterlife. So this supports what I just was telling you, that the Jews are separatists and they are controllers when you go up to the hierarchy of the world power structure. Again, they rather preserve their tradition than teach any beliefs about afterlife and personal fates in an afterlife. So what they will give you as a hell in Jewish tradition is when you go to Sheol, you won't be reunited with the people, with your people. So we see that all of these beliefs serve the people who created the beliefs agenda. So this is where you have to be careful and understand how deep this rabbit hole goes. In Jewish tradition, individuals come and go, but the Jewish tribe and its traditions are to be maintained at all costs. Now, this is the selfish mentality of mostly everybody on earth, because again, traditions are the biggest enemy of truth. The truth will unite us all, but the traditions is what maintain the chaos, and the order will also be maintained, and the deceivers will maintain their rulership in this circumstance. So the consequences of abiding by Jewish laws set forth centuries ago have more of an impact on this life than on what happens in the next life. In sum, the tribe and its customs must be preserved. Equally disconcerting was the fact that when Jews were slaughtered in battles with the Babylonians or some other tribe, both Jewish and Jewish pagans suffered the same fate. Surviving Jews noticed that. Why adhere to a one God only belief system when at the end of the day only scraps of food on the plates of starving Jewish children and lavish feasts were thrown by pagan worshipping Jewish merchants? The solution was that just rewards and just punishments would be distributed in the next life. So again, we can see how the ideologies are incorporated into the belief system to serve certain agendas. And as we read on, it says different schools of thought emerged that describe how that would work. For instance, the school of Shammai endorsed the idea that there will be a day of judgment when righteous people are separated from the scoundrels. The righteous will be sent to Gan Eden, or Garden of Eden, also known as heaven, and wicked people go straight to Gehenna, also known as hell. And an in-between group comprised of people who were neither nearly purely good nor purely evil are also sent to Gehenna, where they will be punished for 12 months. Fully cleansed, they will be admitted to Gan Eden, but punishment for the truly bad ones in Gehenna is unrelenting and only comes to an end when they are annihilated. So that pretty much sums up a little bit of information on some afterlife beliefs that we see surrounding Judaism and also Jewish traditions. We see that their afterlife is kind of vague, and that any idea of an afterlife we do see, such as what we just read here concerning Judaism and also previously with the Jewish beliefs, we see that they are very agenda driven when we step into Jewish societies, and it makes perfect sense. But now we're going to move on into Christianity. In summer 2011, Rob Bell, a celebrity in the ranks of evangelical ministers, created a windstorm of opposition among his peers by releasing a book that challenges traditional Christian views about heaven, hell, and eternal damnation. The primary source of the uproar was Bell's position that an all-loving God would not consign billions of non-Christians to eternal suffering in hell. The idea that only a select few Christians will spend forever in a peaceful, joyous place called heaven, while the rest of humanity spends forever in torment and punishment in hell with no chance for anything better, is deemed misguided and toxic by Bell. Now, this is just some ideology surrounding this guy, Rob Bell. And I chose to use this information concerning Christianity because it's very interesting, and also to share my own beliefs with all of this as I've been doing. So just to read some more. Equally appalling in the eyes of other evangelical ministers was Bell's suggestion that everybody, irrespective of their religious beliefs, eventually ends up in heaven. Other critics focus on what they perceive to be Bell's denial of hell as a realm of unabated torture for sinners and unbelievers. They fear that denying the role of hell in the afterlife plays havoc with the fundamental ingredient of the church. The essential features of Christian afterlife beliefs cannot be found in the New Testament. As Keck observes, the New Testament contains not a single chapter that summarizes the Christian view. In fact, since chapters in the New Testament were written by many people over a period of hundreds of years, the book contains many contradictions that have taken theologians centuries to iron out. Now, before I read any further, I just want to say that I know for a fact that that line is true. And I actually got 2 videos on this channel called Biblical Contradictions, and you can check those out in my playlist, Exposing the Truth About Christianity. Catholicism dominated Christianity throughout the Middle Ages. Protestantism emerged at the end of the Middle Ages, largely due to protests against certain practices of the Mother Church. For instance, Martin Luther, a leading figure in the Protestant Revolution, objected to the practice of the church receiving payments for parishioners to reduce the amount of time either they or their loved ones would spend in purgatory being cleansed of their sins. The Protestant Revolution resulted in a rise and proliferation of a host of Protestant denominations. And there are many, many Christian denominations, brothers and sisters. We're talking about tens of thousands of them, and different sects and organizations that break down into other different sects and organizations. And it can be endless. So you could check out a lot of this deception and revealing the truth about Christianity. That's one of my playlists on this channel. I need to do a lot of more videos concerning the Christianity deception and the world religion deception. If you would like me to do more videos on these world religions and go deep into this stuff and spend some more time on this, just go ahead and give me a thumbs up and leave a comment in the description. Despite the split with the Catholic Church and the proliferation of different versions of the Christian faith, all members of Christendom seem to agree on the following premises. These are some of the basic Christian principles that govern the religion. And take a moment just to look at those following premises in front of you before we move on. So those few ideologies that we see concerning Christianity are the foundation for the control mechanism and just basically the main foundation of all Christianity. As we move on, last but not least, we're going to get into Islam, and we're going to get right into it. So, given the common Abrahamic origins of all three major Western religions, one should not be surprised by overlapping beliefs. Indeed, Islamic and Christian afterlife beliefs are similar in several respects. The existence of heaven and hell are fundamental beliefs in both religions, and both are confident that a day of reckoning will occur when everyone will go before God and be judged according to how they had lived their lives. The righteous will go to heaven and the unrighteous will be sent to hell. Like Christians, Muslims believe the following ideologies that are in front of the screen. Take some time and look over those as we move on, and you can see the parallels and how the control is achieved on the masses. Note that at a crucial and consequential difference between Christian and Islamic perspectives is Christians believe that heaven is openly only to people who accept Jesus Christ as their savior. Muslims believe that Jesus was one of many prophets, 120,000 all told, but was not the true hero of the second coming. Muhammad is the final prophet sent by God to remind people why he created them and what he expects in return. In Islam, God's message was recorded in the Quran. When we look at all of these world religions, we understand that the message is driven into the masses because it is not told by the controllers. The controllers speak the messages through the God that you believe in. So since you don't understand that at the root of all these world messiahs is deception, and that these are really representations of ancient rulers who had the formula encoded into these religions on how to keep the captives captive. Okay, because like we read, once two nations went to war, it was up to those conquerors to decide whether that conquered nation would continue on with its deities. And that was important because the true spirituality of those people is inside of that belief system and those deities. Those people have a belief system that make them act accordingly and serve their agendas. And the agendas of the ancient world was to serve and preserve nature as well as your fellow brother. And that was a beautiful system of order on this earth until these world religions set up shop. So just to move on and get some more information on Islam, another difference between the two religions is Muslims do not share the Christian belief that all are born sinful. Instead, everyone is born pure. God created human beings because he wanted to share with us the bounties and benefits of existence. To this end, he endowed each individual with unlimited potentials to be realized during the course of a lifetime. When the soul that has realized its true nature is resurrected, it faces a loving and compassionate God. That's a beautiful belief. A lot of Islam perspectives, Brother Sanchez, really resonate with. I get love from a lot of Muslims. There are different kinds of Muslims. That's why I don't judge them as a whole, because there's a lot of Muslims out there with beautiful spirits. And the same can be said about Christians in every other religion, even atheists. Okay, everyone's where they at in their mental place of consciousness, because we all trying to figure out this reality, and we all on our journey asking the questions which keeps us on the quest. So we see that when the soul that has realized its true nature is resurrected, it faces a loving and compassionate God. One thing I want to point out about most modern religions is that the supreme deity is a male deity or a god. And in a lot of ancient cultures, we know that there was the mother goddess. I don't have to get into that because I have a whole playlist surrounding the mother goddess that I recommend you guys check it out. The link is in the description. So to move on with this, people who have forgotten why God created them and have ignored their responsibilities will come into the presence of a severe and wrathful God. That is the Islam afterlife beliefs. And that's kind of simple, okay? You do good, you meet a compassionate God. You do bad, you meet a wrathful God. There's balance in all things. It's just how we define them. Even anger is not to be looked at as negative, because what if I'm angry about the right things? What if I'm angry that we're polluting the oceans, then my anger is a good thing at that point. So again, balance and knowing where everything serves its place. But just to move on with some more Islam afterlife beliefs, no two people are alike in their attributes, and everyone needs God's guidance in finding their paths. And that God is, of course, Allah. Finding and remaining on one's path requires discipline, adherence to the laws of personal and spiritual conduct set forth in the Quran and the Hadith, and constant nurturing of one's connection with the Creator. Although God is unknowable, His will is made known to Muslims who seek it and understand that everything is ultimately connected to Him. According to one account of Islamic afterlife beliefs, Chittick in 1992, the soul leads an independent existence after the death of the body and does so until the day of resurrection when the body and soul are reassembled. Here are some of the details of the soul's voyage. On the first night in the grave, the dead are visited by two angels who question them about their beliefs. Their souls will be put into good or bad situations according to their answers. The veil, meaning the body that has hidden the soul from view, is removed and the soul manifests its true form. It is easy to hide thoughts and feelings behind a body made of clay, but all is laid bare when the soul is revealed. This takes place in an imaginal realm of existence in which the soul comes into sharp focus. Sacred texts refer to this imaginal world as the interworld, in which souls take on shapes that symbolize their past deeds and misdeeds. The interworld is like a dream world, and dreams are taken as apt representations of what was and prognosticators of what will be. Incomplete souls can take on animal forms that are dominated by negative qualities. For instance, the famous Islamic theologian Al-Ghazali wrote, "On the day of resurrection, meanings are bared. Then form takes on the color of meaning. If the person had been dominated by passion and greed, he will be seen on that day in the form of a pig. If he was dominated by anger and aggressions, he will be seen in the form of a wolf." Now, again, these are all just Islamic beliefs concerning the afterlife. Again, they are just beliefs. I actually recommend everyone to spend some time forming their own beliefs from their own mind just to see what their soul come up with. Because at the root of a lot of world religion is everyone is being ruled by the belief of one man or a group of people. So you have a mind for a reason, ladies and gentlemen, and it's a beautiful thing, but it's a terrible thing to waste. Now, as we move on, I'm going to conclude this video. This video began with descriptions of ancient attempts to control phenomena that were beyond the reach of understanding by pre-scientific knowledge, or at least we believe this to be so. God, spirits, demons, deceased ancestors, and external agents of many sorts were invented as explanations for births, deaths, the availability or scarcity of food, catastrophic floods, solar and lunar eclipses, rising and falling tides, tribal victories and defeats, and many other occurrences that are no longer mysteries. In my opinion, I don't believe that these occurrences were mysteries to the ancients, in my personal belief. But in ancient time, rituals that involve group activities were created to appease supernatural agents, and group bonding was one of the crucial side effects of engaging in these ceremonies. The survival of one's tribe was essential to the survival of the members of that tribe. This video describes a shift in social structures that emerged when growing crops and managing livestock replaced hunting and gathering as the control increased. People needed to behave themselves for two reasons. One was for the well-being of society. The other was for their personal well-being for all eternity. And we can see how these basic principles were corrupted to serve agendas, and religions were created to create the type of world we see today based upon these deities that have the whole planet deceived. Some beliefs that have become hardened will eventually soften up, and other beliefs will take their place. But as we've seen so many times, that takes time, and the process can be grueling. Western religions rely on the belief that the soul and the body are separate and resist evidence that most likely that's not the case. In this and other ciphers, our greatest challenge will be how to deal with absolutism. People on all sides of an argument who are absolutely certain that what they believe is true are fully capable of engaging in willful ignorance. As Koss observes, beliefs can be excuses to stop thinking. Large settlements became less egalitarian and more totalitarian with the rise of chiefdoms, rulers, and other agents of social control. Priests and prophets became important members of the ruling class, and that marked a change in strategies of social control. Now we can see this same strategy acted out today. Again, I show y'all video after video, the conspiracy and the connection between your world religious leaders and politics and your political leaders, your governing officials. And it goes back to church and state in the ancient world. The two were never separated. The only thing happened was the New World Order. Now, I can't put all of this in this video, but I will be making future videos that will be very simple for you guys to show y'all how the deception is achieved, how it was achieved, and is maintained by the deceivers. So the invention of monotheism combined with the separation of the soul from the body resulted in one of the most powerful mechanisms of mass social control. We see this in our society. Do I need to expound on it? I think not. There are so many truths to be discovered, so many things we don't know, that willful ignorance of explanations and worldviews other than one's own can result in potentially explosive stalemates. So we find ourselves in a bit of a bind. Millions of people believe that their version of God is correct, that their pathway to eternal life is the only pathway. Other versions and pathways are wrong. So terribly wrong that radical leaders of opposing camps stand ready to mobilize tribal support to defeat the enemies of God by using nuclear weapons that can potentially destroy the entire earth. Susskind in 2008 issues a similar warning when he writes, "Those two genies of wish fulfillment, messianic fervor and technological power, have spotted each other. If they come together, the world as it is now known will no longer exist." So, ladies and gentlemen, let us work on preventing that from happening. Let us realize that at the root of all world religions is deception for massive control. Realize that that deception really needs to be attacked. We are all connected and the earth is what we have in common. But when we get into these different gods and different beliefs that was given to us by these deceivers, we can see how we are all divided based on ideologies. Someone that looked like you, talk like you, will be looked at as an alien because they worship Jesus and you worship Buddha. When really there's good and bad Buddhists, and there's good and bad Christians, and this can be said for all religions and all people. So why don't we find a good in all people to create a good existence, a better world, instead of remaining divided and conquered by the deception that has been rooted in our psyche? Because you had no choice in the matter when you chose the deity that you hold so dearly to. And though it may all seem innocent when you're in church singing your songs, and it seems innocent, you believing in these deities gives life to this religion, and this religion is fulfilling an agenda, a very hideous one. So with that being said, this completes this entire series. I'd like to thank you all for tuning in once again. Remember, I can't do it without your support. Even if you just thumbs up, share my videos, I really appreciate that support. If you want to crank it up a notch and join our family of patrons and gain all type of exclusives and good stuff like that, get in the description link, check out the Patreon page, check out how to become a patron of this channel, because I want to keep making videos, guys. There's a lot of deception to be exposed, and I love freeing the minds of the masses because I was once a sheep. Remember, new uploads every Thursday. Peace and much love.